Congratulations, you're about to be a father. But what should you expect during the first month? I'll tell you what, it is a whirlwind. From the delivery, to the nursing room, to going home with your baby for the first time. It's like 1 minute you're going to the hospital with nothing, and the next minute you're at home with a little baby. In today's video, I'm going to tell you what to expect during the first month. I cannot wait to get into it. If you get any value from this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment with any other questions that you might have. Let's get right into it. The first thing I want to talk to you about is what to expect from your baby's appearance. A baby is going to change dramatically from day 1 to the end of your 30th day. Everything from the skin, the head, the hands, the hair, everything is going to look different. So as soon as your baby comes out of the womb, there's a few things that might startle you. The first of which is the color of their skin. Typically, the color of a newborn baby's skin might be blue or purple or black. You might be surprised or shocked by the look of their skin. But over the course of the next few weeks, their skin color is going to change as they are exposed to the environment of this world. Another thing that you might notice in your child is that their head is disformed, or they have even a cone head appearance. That will also change. You see, as the head moves through the woman's body and out of the uterus, it looks very different. It actually shapes and melds to get through, squeeze through that tiny hole. Over the next few weeks, it's going to grow back and kind of morph into its normal phase. It is even possible that they might even have to wear a guide over their head to get it back to where it's supposed to be. And this is very normal. The other thing that new dads are going to notice is the umbilical cord. It's this funky looking green and yellow mucousy looking line that connects to mom, basically. You might even have the opportunity to cut it. And if you do, and you're not too squeamish, I'd recommend you take the opportunity. But keep in mind, the umbilical cord is still going to have a remnant lingering for about 2 weeks or so. And it's going to get a little stinky, but don't worry, it's just going to fall off by its own. Don't mess with it. Don't get it too wet. You just want to try to work around the umbilical cord as much as possible. But it's just going to fall off naturally, and it ends up not being too big of a deal. The other thing you're going to notice, particularly with the legs, is that they're going to be kind of bowed and bent in an unnatural looking way. But this is totally normal because a baby is a little bit more flexible than a full-grown human being. And those legs tend to bend and bow in order to fit inside mom's belly. Don't worry, the doctor's definitely going to check them out and they're going to straighten out just fine. Hair is another thing that can be pretty startling for new dads. Let's face it, you don't expect your baby to come out looking like a wolf man, especially if it's a little girl. But I'll tell you what, my little girl came out with hair everywhere. Her ears, her head, her back. This is totally normal, and a lot of this hair is just going to fall out. In fact, your baby's hair color might even change. My daughter's hair originally was black and brown, and she ended up being blonde. So don't be surprised about a hairy little wolf baby that you might give birth to. So now that we've covered some of the appearance of your baby, let's talk about some of the mannerisms, reflexes, and things you're going to see your baby doing regularly. The first of which is that you're probably going to notice that your baby is twitchy, both in their arms, legs, and the way that they move their head. This is normal as they're trying to get used to their surroundings. You might find that they hear things and move their head. That's a great part of their first month development. You might also notice that they bring their hands up to their face to look at their hands. Again, very normal. Hands can also be a thing that are a little bit weird for parents. You'll notice that they're very tightly clenched the majority of the time, and they probably have dagger-like fingernails. The fingernails are very flexible. You can definitely shave them if you like, but you want to be careful that you don't clip the skin. Newborn babies tend to be very twitchy, so you've got to be very careful when you're clipping those fingernails, and you don't want them to be scratching their face if you can help it. That's definitely something to talk to your doctor about when you're trying to figure out a solution. Keep in mind that over time, those hands are going to open up, and so that's something to be wary of. You might also try putting your finger in your child's hand, and they're going to grasp around it. Again, a very normal thing to see happen, and actually kind of cool. You try to pull your hand away, they might even grasp on tighter. A baby's head and neck are probably the most sensitive parts of your baby, and that's the place where you want to spend the most time protecting. A baby's neck muscles are not fully developed, although a full-term baby might be stronger than an early-term baby. But you definitely want to take care to make sure that that head is stabilized as much as possible. Over the course of the first month, you're going to see a lot of development in the neck, but certainly, absolutely, in the beginning, you're going to want to make sure that you're stabilizing that neck as much as possible. You're also going to want to take care of the head, as there's going to be a soft spot on the top of the head that you want to make sure is protected as well. The head and neck are the most important parts for you as a father to protect during the first few months. Another very important point that I want to touch on is the lack of sleep and the increased stress for you. Having a new child is a huge step in responsibility. Lack of sleep is a problem. Having a crying baby is very challenging. At all times, you want to make sure you're staying as calm as possible. If you feel yourself getting to the peak where you just can't take it anymore, refrain from overacting and try to do a switch with your partner. It's very, very important. I would also recommend, if possible, to take turns each night. So one night, maybe you can get a good night's sleep, and the other night your partner can. Under no circumstances ever do you want to shake your baby. Remember, the head and the neck need to be supported at all times, particularly during the first month. Now that we've talked about the appearance and the main body parts, let's talk about the sensory system that your baby comes equipped with. So new babies are actually pretty resilient. They actually come equipped with a lot of interesting skills that make sure that they stay safe. One of which is a sucking reflex. Basically, anything that you put in or around that baby's mouth, they are going to suck. So this is a great tool if you're trying to breastfeed, bottle feed, however you're trying to feed them. They need to have that sucking reflex in order to get sustenance, in order to feed. If your baby is crying, pro tip, you might even use your finger, put it in their mouth to suck on, and that might actually help soothe them just a little bit. One of the senses that is going to develop very quickly over the first month is their eyesight. When they first pop out of the womb, they're going to have a hard time seeing anything, and you want to avoid exposing them to very bright, intense lights. The eyes can typically see images about 12 inches away from them. Things are going to be a little bit blurry, and they're going to have a hard time picking out colors. Mainly black and white is what they're going to see. Now, what they will be able to pick up on is images and people's faces. So over the course of the next month, they're going to get to know your face. You're going to want to keep your baby about a foot away from your face so they can get to know you and recognize you. That's going to be great for when you're trying to soothe your child. You also want to try to expose them to high contrast images like black circles on a white background or a white rectangle on a black background. These types of images can really get their mental and cognitive juices flowing. Surprisingly, a child's hearing and eardrums come fully equipped and ready to rock. You might find that their hearing is extremely sensitive to you entering or even leaving a room. You might find that they turn their head to the sound of your voice. It's kind of a cool thing to see. Obviously, you want to avoid loud noises, shockingly shrilling type noises. So keep things calm and rhythmic, and typically some sort of a humming sound will be very soothing to a young baby. This is a great way to soothe your child with a low type of sound. Sense of smelling and tasting are also fully developed. In fact, a baby's taste buds are actually more sensitive than your taste buds, so they will taste everything. Sense of touch is also fully developed, and that's one of the quickest ways that you can develop a bond with your new child. When I had my first baby, I was terrified to hold her because I just didn't want to break her. But dads, if there's one thing that I would recommend, it's have as much physical contact with your child as possible. This is the first way to develop a bond. You want to make sure that you're stroking lovingly, light touch, and soothing sounds. All of these things together are going to let your baby know that you're their father and you're here to protect them. The baby's brain is going to be developing extremely rapidly over the course of the next month and year. So you definitely want to facilitate as much growth as possible. Things like singing to the child, reading to the child, talking to the child. These are great ways to stimulate the brain and get it ready to start learning more advanced topics more quickly. So make it a point to read to your child as regularly as possible. Obviously, a baby can't talk, but their main way of communication is crying. And please believe, new young babies cry. It's how they let you know that they need something. So let's go over the 4 main points in our checklist to make sure that your baby is okay. The first main point is to check their diaper. Make sure that they're dry. If there's any poop or pee in there, you're going to want to change it. That's step one. The second thing you want to look for is if they're hungry or if they're full. If they haven't eaten recently, you definitely want to make sure you feed them. Now, you definitely want to speak to your lactation consultant or to your pediatrician because dieting changes a little bit with babies. You're going to want to be feeding them very regularly over the course of the next 2 weeks. In fact, babies are going to lose about 10% of their body weight from the time they're born and over the course of the next few days. They're going to gain it back quickly, but it's something that you need to be very attuned and aware of. They're going to lose their weight, but you want to make sure that they're getting enough food to gain it back. At any rate, if your baby's crying, you definitely want to make sure that they've been fed. It could be they're just hungry. Another reason your baby might be crying is they're just uncomfortable. Maybe something is too snug in a certain area. Maybe you clipped the wrong button. Maybe something's poking them. Maybe it's a tag in the back of their shirt. You just want to make sure that your baby's comfortable and do a quick spot check of their environment. The fourth thing that you're going to want to look out for is that they're nice and snug. You see, a brand new baby to this world only knows one thing, and that's the snugness of the mother's womb. You want to make sure that you keep them nice and snug, nice and tight. Look, not so tight that they're constricted, but tight enough that they're snug, like they're still in their mother's room. That's definitely a great way to soothe them. You can also try different techniques of holding the baby. The most common holding technique is a cradle just like this. You're using your arm to support the head in the neck, which is very important in every time you're holding your newborn child. A second very popular and common holding technique is to simply lift the baby up again, supporting the neck with your hands. Putting the baby right on your shoulder. Maybe a little bounce, maybe a little back tap. This is a really effective way of holding your child and soothing them. It helps keep the milk down. Another thing that's great about this is that they might spit up right on your shoulder. So make sure that you've got a rag handy. The third technique I want to show you for holding your baby is a little bit more sophisticated, but is very effective at soothing. So you're going to take one hand and support the booty. The next hand is going to go right onto their chest, and you're going to simply give them a little slow movement. Remember, we are never shaking our baby. Never shaking our baby. Let's talk about a few of the milestones that you're going to see during the first month. The first major milestone is your baby moving its head from side to side. This is going to be a strengthening of the neck muscle, which happens over the course of the first several months. The second major milestone that you're going to be looking for is your baby moving his or her hands to their face and kind of investigating their hand. They're just going to be very curious, and that hand is one of the quickest and earliest things that they're going to notice. The third major milestone, and in my opinion one of the coolest, is your child kind of scoping out his or her environment, looking at different things around the room, looking at different people. It's actually really cool to see them. They're so curious, and that's definitely a milestone that you want to be watching for during the first month. The fourth milestone that you're going to be looking for in the first month is them tracking moving objects. Maybe you're walking past the bed and they move their head to follow you. You'll see there's a common denominator here in a lot of the development over the first month. It's in their ability to see and their ability to move their head. The neck muscles and the eyes are going to be developing very, very rapidly. The fifth milestone is, again, them moving to follow noises. So maybe they hear daddy or mommy's voice and they move their head to find that source. I hope you got a lot of value out of this video. The first month is super intense and there's so many new things happening. And for a lot of new dads, it can be very, very scary. You could be nervous to actually hold your baby or change a diaper or learn how to feed them. But I promise you that if you don't get involved now, you're going to regret it. Getting involved in these early days is one of the best ways for you to build a bond with your child. And I promise you that getting involved early and often is one of the best things that you can do. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to go through the first month of your baby's development with me and Actidad. You're definitely on the right track to being an awesome father, and I cannot wait to see you for month 2 of our guide to the first year. If you got any value out of this guide, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us to reach more and more dads around the world, and create a world where dads are more involved in their kids' lives. Lastly, you're going to want to leave a comment to let me know what I missed. What are your biggest questions? What are your biggest fears about being a father? And I can tell you what, if you're watching videos like this, you are a step ahead. You also might consider joining our Facebook group for awesome dads. It's an amazing resource that gives you the tools and the community that you need to be successful. With all that said, have an awesome day and enjoy your new child.